Welcome! I know what you're thinking when you first see this, but just stick with it. I promise you that it will be worth it. If you're new here, my name is Richelski and I play a lot of Salmon. I also make helpful guides on a ton of different things in Salmon in Splatoon 3. Weapons, specials, maps, so check out some of the playlists. The idea for this video came from a friend of mine, and at first I was a bit perplexed by it. But throughout writing this script and researching footage, I've come to realise that actually, maybe sharing advice for the Splat Bomb is helpful, as it's essentially your second weapon and one of the most consistent tools you'll have at your disposal throughout Salmon. As nice as the thought is, we don't have different sub-weapons in Salmon, so learning how to get the most out of the Splat Bomb will definitely help you improve as a player in Salmon. Number 1. The Splat Bomb in Salmon is no different to the Splat Bomb in PvP. It does a maximum of 180 damage at close range, while its minimum is 30 damage when it hits for indirect damage. Its ink usage is 70, meaning you'll use just under 3/4 of your ink tank when you throw one. This is a major factor to consider when you're using a heavyweight weapon or a weapon that is actually stronger than the bomb itself, but more on that later. Splat bombs also quickly create turf and clear small areas, which can be very useful if you have a weapon that struggles to paint its own feet. Number 2. Splat bombs are used primarily against two enemies, Moors and Flyfish. There are other ways to defeat these bosses, but bombs are usually the quickest or safest way. This also applies for mudmouths. For everything else, Splat bombs can play a major role in helping you defeat enemies. They can assist with damage against heftier enemies such as big shots and drizzlers, and this can even be done from a distance if you feel like you can't get close to them. This also works for stingers and should always be something to consider if you can't safely reach a stinger but need it gone. You'll need between 3 and 4 bombs to completely destroy a stinger, but this can be fewer if you use your main weapon as well. They're exceptionally handy against groups of lessers. If you find yourself not doing anything waiting for lures to come in, or just don't have any bosses around you, bomb the lessers to prevent them from overwhelming you in the future. Splat bombs can clear an area ahead of you going there and also creates turf for you to move through. They're also useful for leaving behind if you have to leave quickly and don't have the time to slay everything without ending up dead. Especially useful for clusters of lessers or briefly stunning enemies to stall them whilst you're able to escape. Number 3. Weapons are split into 3 classes: lightweight, middleweight and heavyweight. These classifications give you a general idea of your weapon's ink tank and ink recovery. For the most part, lightweight weapons are able to recover ink quicker than middleweight weapons, which are able to do this quicker than heavyweight weapons. Something to consider when wielding a lightweight weapon is that your splat bombs are almost as important as your main weapon. Generally speaking, lightweight weapons have less DPS and overall power, but have superior ink efficiency and movement. This allows you to recover ink much more quicker than other classes of weapons, which allows you to throw more bombs. Think about weapons like the Junior, the Bamboozler, for example, both objectively weaker weapons with low overall damage, but some of the quickest moving weapons in the game with the ability to constantly put out bombs. You're not punished as much for throwing bombs compared to middle or heavyweight weapons, so naturally you'll want to use these along with your main weapon. Bombs are so integral to these weapons to help slay enemies or just weaken them. If you're the only person going out to take care of bosses, you'll need bombs to help you stack damage. Though it doesn't take too long, be mindful of having space and safety to recover ink. One of the roles to consider when running a lightweight weapon is being on Flyfish or Moor's duty to help cover your teammates who might not be able to throw as many bombs. Whilst weapon rolls are not the be and end all of Salmon, taking note of what weapon you have and maximising your efficiency is one of the best ways to improve at Salmon and contributes to a smoother outcome. For middleweight weapons, you'll need to strike a fine balance between using bombs and your main weapon. This can be difficult when playing blasters, for example, as they're notoriously ink hungry and don't paint very well. Bombs are useful for clearing your feet and creating space, but they also deplete your ink tank quickly, leaving you little room to survive or exit. Other classes of weapons are less punishing, and most shooters will balance their ink tanks without much issue. They also have a bit more freedom in their movement, which feels less restrictive. Generally speaking, if you think your weapon does more damage than bombs, focus on preserving ink for that, but try not to neglect bombs completely. Another thing to consider with overall ink management is learning when to throw bombs, throw eggs, or use your main weapon. There isn't a strict right or wrong answer here. It entirely depends on the weapon you have, the current spawns around you, and the quota needed with the time remaining. Sometimes you'll have to neglect bombs for eggs and vice versa. It's worth mentioning that it's always easier to run eggs when all lessers in the area are dealt with, but sometimes you'll be forced to deposit eggs whilst dancing around lessers and things like rain and missiles. If you ever find yourself with a second or two of downtime, consider what is more important, eggs or killing enemies. Number 4. Weapons that have high DPS and high damage don't often feel the benefit from Splat Bombs. This is because your main weapon will output far more damage at a faster rate than bombs ever will. Throwing a bomb, recovering ink, and then throwing another bomb will only do a certain amount of damage whilst taking time, not something you want to focus on doing if you have weapons like the Sploosh or the Dapples. This isn't to say that you shouldn't throw bombs when you have these weapons. Remember, flyfish sadly exist. But what I want to get across is that your weapon's strength far outweighs what bombs can do, so you should prioritise your ink tank for your main weapon and not bombs. Use bombs when you need to, but when faced with a cluster of cohorts, these weapons will clear them quickly. Sometimes you'll want to shoot more so your rhythm of killing isn't interrupted and you're not forced to stop, recover ink and then throw a bomb. Weapons like Dynamo, Explosher, E-Liter, Hydra and Tentabrella are classed as heavyweight, meaning they are slower and generally less ink efficient in comparison to other groups of weapons. They have limited shots or charge cycles before they're forced to recover ink, and using almost 3/4 of your ink tank for a bomb can be extremely difficult to manage. For example, after using a bomb, you barely have enough ink for one full charge of a Hydra. Consider that in the scope of the game you're playing. Why are you throwing bombs as a Hydra player? Is this where you're most efficient? Is it even safe to do this? Are bombs what you need right now? Consider the enemies in front of you. How does a Hydra benefit from throwing bombs, or can you use the time to charge a full cycle instead? The same goes for any weapon that is a heavyweight or has damage that exceeds what bombs can do, and these decisions will naturally be difficult or slow at first. After time, you'll start to make these decisions quickly and start to quickly adapt to the weapons you're given and the ways in which you should use them to get the most out of them. Number 5. The hitbox of a Splat Bomb works differently in Splatoon 3 compared to Splatoon 2. It has a larger area of explosion and can activate multiple hitboxes at once. This means you can use the hitboxes and immediate explosions on the Splat Bomb to damage many things at once or cause stacked damage to individual bosses. Some examples of this. A bomb at the top of a fish stick can help kill the small fry if you have a weapon that struggles with them, such as Brellas or Chargers. You can immediately explode bombs by throwing them at the body of steel eels, and this can take out enemies like flyfish. It's very useful for stunning scrappers and dealing with lesser salmonids too. In addition, they can cause massive damage to stingers, meaning you're only left with 1 or 2 pots to take care of. The same mechanism comes into play for slamming lids. When their shields are activated, Splat Bombs immediately explode on contact and can defeat or damage many things. This is extremely useful against flyfish. If you aim it correctly, you can one-shot a flyfish using the barrier. On certain maps, well-placed bombs can explode flyfish just by virtue of being next to them. Especially handy if you don't have a weapon that will let you get bombs quickly or you're in an unsafe position. It's worth learning because it can speed up the killing time and lets you move on to another objective. Anywhere on a map where flyfish spawn close to a ledge, you should be able to pull this off. Thank you for watching, and I hope this genuinely helps with your growth in Summer Run. Let me know what you think. I will see you soon.